You're here again, or you're here for the first time. Hopefully you're here again. And if you're here for the first time, go back and listen to all the other episodes we did. A lot of you guys are really loving the nut maxing episode, I've noticed. I don't know what that's about, but sure. So today we are going to feature a conversation that was had with Julie and the owner of the Center CD, Dr. Kat Dukes, who is the reason behind why you're able to watch what we have going on today. So the conversation with Julie and Kat was about initiating sex. And we're going to show you that conversation. But before we do, we're going to talk about it a little bit more with Julie. So Julie, explain to us what the conversation you guys had was about. And then I want to talk about just some things you want to point out before we go into that conversation. So what did you and Kat talk about during this conversation you had with initiating sex? What kind of, just lead people into what happened.
Sure.
Initiate the conversation about initiation.
Initiate the conversation about initiating. Yeah. So it's a really common, the conversation came up when we were talking about like common like obstacles that people bring into the therapy space.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were talking a lot about sort of what we do as therapists when that obstacle is brought in. And what I think is really valuable about this conversation is what you're hearing is two different approaches, but not different goals. And so you can start to see that like a couple things. One, you can see that there are infinite ways to find workarounds for an obstacle, right? Rather than thinking there's something broken and we need to fix it, and there's only one win condition, right? A thing you will hear me challenge a lot if you are a regular listener of Bedroom Brainiacs is this idea of one win condition.
Mm-hmm.
It's rare there's one win condition. So what we talk about is like, here's an obstacle here, and there's all these ways around it. You can go over, you can go under, you can go around either side, you could go through. It just really depends on what's going to work for the unique persons in the space. And that's what having different therapists and being able to have different therapist brains come together and have these conversations is really great. And so you get an opportunity to see that between Dr. Dukes and I.
So a thing that I think is really important to point out beforehand, before we go into this conversation, is when you talk about initiating sex, the conversation you guys had assumed that the people who were initiating sex already have some level of connection, familiarity, relationship with one another. This isn't about going to a bar and seeing someone you've never met and initiating sex with that person that you've never met.
No, this conversation is specifically about like committed relationships and obstacles that often pop up, frequently pop up and are a really, really common obstacle in like long-term committed relationships, sexual relationships. And so this is a focus on how familiarity and comfort can actually be an obstacle rather than a boon in long-term sexual relationships.
It sounds like you talk about that one win condition a lot. And it sounds like in this case, the win condition is I've got my long-term relationship. I've won. The sex will just happen.
The sex will just happen is I can't wait for us to do an episode we have lined up about like sex myths.
Mm-hmm.
The sex will just happen and spontaneity of sex is a myth that just creates so many obstacles.
Yeah.
And this is one of them. This idea of like, we'll just fall into bed together and sex will happen.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, life's hard, especially in 2025. And then like, so life's hard, and that can make it difficult to prioritize sex because you're prioritizing your bills and your life and your family and taking care of yourself and all these things. And sex starts to fall onto the back burner because you think, I'm in this relationship. It's committed. It's long-term. We'll get around to it. And it's like, you kick that can down the road long enough, you kind of forget how to get around to it. And that's a big part of what Kat and I talk about is like specific tools that can be used to reintegrate sex into, like, the initiation of sex into the relationship so that it's happening again in ways that feel good and you feel seen and you don't feel rejected or you don't feel undesired, right? And really common things that come up, that rejection and undesire feedback loop.
It can be tough, right? Because a lot of the information that I've seen that pertains to initiating sex or initiating and expressing an interest in having sex is targeted toward someone who you desire but don't really know very well. As far as approaching someone, how to approach someone, Riz, as the kids say. But I think that a lot of the information from that doesn't work when you're in a committed relationship, because what is the conversation going to be? What do you enjoy? What do you like to do for fun? Who are you? What's your name? Can I come back to your place? You live in the same place. Right. So I think a lot of that familiarity kind of, how do you express an interest in someone who knows a lot about you?
Well, you're sort of talking about two things, right? Like, one thing you're talking about is this idea of like getting to know somebody with the goal of sex. And it's like, cool, okay, everybody's on board, everybody knows what's up. What you're seeking is a level of intimacy that creates enough comfort for you all to feel able to be vulnerable in a sexual engagement together. Mm-hmm. Awesome. You've already done that in this long-term committed relationship. And what often really comes up is it's not necessarily about the initiating sex isn't, do I like this person enough to have sex with them? Oftentimes what's coming up is, do I have time for sex? Mm-hmm. Am I in the mood for sex? Mm-hmm. Can I get in the mood for sex? Mm-hmm. And what happens, Esther Perel, who does a lot of research about long-term committed relationships, she wrote a book a while ago called Mating in Captivity. She's still doing a lot of this research. It's interesting stuff. She talks about like the inverse relationship between comfort and mystery and like sexual enjoyment. And like if comfort goes too high, your sexual enjoyment actually goes down. And some of that seems to be, just kind of anecdotally from the work that I do, seems to be about this idea of like mind reading, which is both fully a myth, not both, but it is fully a myth. But it's also a thing like, oh, hey, I know that you have a busy day today. So we share a living space, so I'm going to do XYZ to make your day easier. Right? And people do these sorts of things for each other in these long-term committed relationships. And then they go to initiate sex and the other person goes, you should know I have an early morning tomorrow. Right? Or you should know that I'm really tired and that I'm not going to be in the mood because I'm tired. A of all, y'all, we all got to get comfortable with tired sex. It's going to happen. We're tired. It's 2025. We're tired. Tired sex is great. Tired sex is a wonderful thing. If you wait until you're not tired to have sex, you might never have sex again.
2025 is and has been an exhausting time.
Yes. And that's it. I have seen very much in my work, like the impact 2025 is having on relationships, which is like, we have to do so much just to feel like we can get through a day, mm-hmm. And whatever giant news comes our way every single day. And there is a sense of like, I don't have the energy for this. Mm-hmm. Or I am so tired of feeling hurt and unseen and unheard. And I'm so tired of being torn down and destroyed as a marginalized person in society that I don't really feel sexy. Mm-hmm. And like, that conversation isn't generally happening between people. And then we're falling into this feedback loop of like, one person's trying to initiate, the other person is not interested. And then that person who's trying to initiate stops initiating, which then makes the other person feel undesired. And now mm-hmm. both people feel undesired. Everybody feels rejected. And they sit in this space of not taking an action.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how they sort of end up in our office, where you'll see in the conversation what Dr. Dukes and I talk about, sort of how we approach kind of breaking through those barriers. This is a big reason why it's really hard to talk about, because it is very vulnerable. And there is a challenge in being able to say to somebody, like, hey, I have sexual wants. And especially if it's someone who you genuinely love and care about and you don't want to do harm to the relationship, there's a desire to be like, it feels for many people like an impossible space to say, I have these wants without fear that it is going to be heard as a pressure or like a demand.
And I think that what we're doing, what I hope to be one of the results of what we're doing is just by having the conversation, that someone listening to this or watching this will go, oh my gosh, I've been thinking those exact same thoughts and I've been having these exact same difficulties. Hearing someone else talk about this lets me know that I'm not the only person who is struggling with this. And this is more common than I realized, because no one else is talking about this. But it's like so many other things that we talk about here where it's just like, when else is this conversation going to come up?
Yeah. And it's why I want to talk about it. I'm always going to talk about, I always have talked about this stuff, but a thing that I talk about or say a lot that you'll probably hear again at some point on this podcast is like, when would you have learned how to have these conversations? People so frequently feel shame that they don't know how to have these conversations.
Mm-hmm.
They feel like they're doing something wrong because they're struggling, or when they have the conversation with their partner or partners, it fails.
Mm-hmm.
They say something and it's heard the wrong way and received the wrong way, and now everybody's defensive and the conversation falls apart and everybody feels like a failure. And it sucks.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that sucks. And everybody takes it personal, right? Internally, not like, oh, you did this to me, but like, I did this to me. Why am I so bad at this? But the reality is when did we learn to have these conversations? Most people don't get comprehensive sex education. It's not like we have a single class about how to process our emotions. Did anybody have a processing emotions class in school?
I mean, I think like so many other things, you and I find ourselves talking about popular media, mainstream media so much. And when I say mainstream media, I don't mean it in a way that alt-right wingers talk about mainstream media.
Yeah.
I mean in terms of movies, music, television. So many of our conversations go back to entertainment media, because that's where so many people get the information from.
Yeah.
Because if you're not having the conversations, you're either getting it modeled from the people in your life or more directly from film. But film doesn't have any interest, or music or whatever, but they don't have any interest in presenting an accurate depiction of what you shouldn't do, what may happen. It's all just about being entertaining.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with that, as long as you're aware of what it is.
Yeah. And you know, a film, music, podcasts, even podcasts, they're meant to be narratively satisfying, right? Like this podcast, we are doing this introduction, then you'll watch the conversation between Dr. Dukes and I. That will feel narratively satisfying because we led you there. Narratively satisfying. You know, it's not meant to be narratively satisfying? Your life. But we mostly learn about how to live life through narratives. And so then we land in this weird place where we feel like we're supposed to be completing things in this narratively satisfying way, when the reality is we live and then we die, and stuff is incomplete and stuff isn't meant to be narratively satisfying. You aren't meant to have an important conversation in 42 seconds of dialogue, because that's how long the scene needs to go before we go to commercial.
The funniest example of that to me is in sitcoms. Mm-hmm. I grew up watching sitcoms from the 90s on back to the older sitcoms in like the 60s, 70s, whatever. I grew up on sitcoms. And it was always so funny to me when a popular character would enter a room and it was filmed in front of a live studio audience and everyone would cheer. And the character would walk in and be like, "Hey guys," and then stop for a minute while everyone cheered.
All right, Kelly Bundy.
Yeah, Kelly Bundy,
Yeah.
Steve Urkel, all these
Yep.
guys would walk in. Kramer would walk in, and the crowd would just go wild. And the whole time they're cheering, the character's just standing there looking around, and it feels natural on film because everyone's cheering and everyone's excited. But even as a kid, I would think, man, if there was no laugh track, could you imagine someone walking into your home going, "Hello"? So I went shopping yesterday, and I was like, "What do you want?" So I think that is a great example of that entertainment in real life and that divide. But I mean, I don't want to take up too much time with this because the conversation you guys had was super, super interesting, and we're gonna jump right into that. Is there any last thing you want to say for people who are about to jump into this conversation, or you just want to just get right into it?
Let's get into it. Have fun. These conversations are fun. Fun is important, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make this accessible and fun and not scary and shameful. So hopefully you get a little bit of that out of this conversation that I had with Dr. Dukes.
All right. Well, here we go. Should I do some sort of cool, attempt a cool transition?
Sort of a Wayne's World-esque.
I was thinking that. Do you want to do that? Let's do it.
Okay.
Okay, ready?
Yep.
Hi, I'm Julie Setting with the Center CD, and I'm here with Kat Dukes, also of the Center CD. And we are here talking today about initiation of sex and sexual experiences and the common sort of pitfalls and also tips and tricks to make it a more fun and pleasurable experience.
And so as sex therapists and relationship therapists, Julie and I are going to talk about, well, we've already been talking about, but we're going to talk about some of the ways our individuals and couples in our practice, the challenges they have and the ways that we as therapists help coach them, or the ideas that we give them, or ideas that we have as to ways that they might be able to navigate this sometimes complex landscape in order to make sexual experiences more comfortable and joyful and have more flow. So Julie, you were giving me some of your great ideas about how you help your clients navigate that, or some of the challenges that come up. So tell us a little bit more about that.
So when I think of the way that this comes into my space a lot has to do with assumptions. A really, really common pitfall is the assumption that one move is somebody slamming their foot on the gas and going, I'm trying to get on the Autobahn and drive 100 miles per hour to the finish line.
Right.
And that when that assumption comes up for the receiver, they're suddenly startled. They're like, I wasn't in the headspace for this. I'm in the middle of doing 15 other things. Hold on. I don't have time to be at the finish line.
Right. So initiating sex in the kitchen, or initiating a butt grab in the kitchen means I want to go have intercourse in the bedroom right now.
Right. And it's who said that? Was that said out loud? And if it was, that's a different conversation. Right. But what most commonly happens is when I ask the person who did the butt grab, they're going, their butt looked nice. I just wanted to touch their butt. And to me, that phrase of just I just wanted to touch their butt, that's the gold. That's the, hold on, let's all slow down to a full stop. That's what they were initiating. They were initiating a butt caress. Anything after that will be a new additional layer of initiation. And I think oftentimes the brain speeds away before the person receiving that caress even has an opportunity to go, this feels nice. This is a moment of connection. This is a sexual moment. And it doesn't have to progress to anything additional or anything. It can just be hey, that person rubbed my butt while I was flipping this grilled cheese. And that can be a really enjoyable sexual experience for everybody involved. And it doesn't have to be the finish line. They don't have to go anywhere from that. They can, but there is an entire journey of just learning to stop making the assumption that every touch is an ask for more.
Right.
It doesn't have to be that.
And for some couples, for the initiator, it sometimes is. And for those couples, it has to be a brand new initiation so that the person on the receiving end of the butt grab is not always like defending. So when we have to have a new initiation, that like butt grabs just get to be butt grabs. Like, let's go ahead and renegotiate that every touch is now not an escalator, right? And just like you said, a kiss can now just be a kiss. A butt grab can just be a butt grab. Because for some of our couples, when we have, for example, a high desire partner and a low desire partner, in some of the relationships we've seen, the low desire partner has slowly rejected more and more sexual touch, down to maybe no more deep kissing, no more sexual touch, because they don't want to reject their partner and they don't want to participate in sex they don't want. And so what happens to some of our couples is they reject down to more and more sexual touch because they feel like a lot of those affectionate touches always have to lead to the escalator. So now we have to teach our clients, our couples, exactly what you're saying. Not all touch needs to be the escalator, but we have to teach the initiators, coach the initiators and the receivers that new model.
And the like rewriting definitions is such a valuable part of this like learning experience for anybody. Like you don't have, like, you can rewrite your own definitions. The challenge often is that you don't share them. You in your head go, a butt grab's just a butt grab, and then the person receiving the butt grab is going, this is, you know, and it might not be from you.
Right.
It might be from their past partners.
So true.
Or from, you know, things that they've seen modeled. Or from the way that sex progresses on television and the film. Like,
Which is almost always an escalator.
It's just straight up the
escalator,
high-speed escalator.
And the escalator always has penis and vagina at the top, and there's like not much else.
Nope. That's it. And it's a very, that is a, I wouldn't feel safe on that escalator.
It's 100 miles an hour.
Like, it's, you know, so there's Mitch Hedberg, the comedian, makes a very funny joke. He made a very, very funny joke where he just said, you can't break an escalator. You know, like the punchline is basically like escalator broken. No, escalator temporarily stairs. And it's like, it's still like we have that opportunity to just go like, it doesn't have to be moving. We can stay right here. And I think as well, when we think about initiating, think about it as a sentence. Like really pause for yourself and think like, what am I initiating? Fill in that blank. Because most of the time, people come in and they go like, well, we're having trouble initiating. And then I go, initiating what? And they look at me like I have lobsters crawling out of my ears.
Right.
Right? And that's, to me, such a demonstration of the assumptions that are already in place.
And they're thinking, duh.
You're the sex therapist. We're here
Initiating
for sex therapy.
Right.
The thing we need to initiate is the sex.
Right.
Right. And I'm like trying to slow them down and hold that space and go like, hey, like, I want you to think about what it is you're saying you're initiating.
Right.
I don't know what your sex is. I know what mine is.
Right.
And that's the end of my expertise in regards to like the thing you're trying to initiate.
Right.
So, but I think the other piece that we don't touch on or talk about publicly, right? Like, and to me, why our field and our job is so essential and important is when we think about initiating, why can't we get weird with it?
Tell me more.
So when people think about initiating, right, even in the example we're talking about, it's like somebody comes in and cops a feel.
Yeah.
And like that's the first step to initiating.
Right.
Because that's what we see on every TV show, in every movie, anytime, in most books. Like the thing that communicates that the sex is gonna start
Yeah.
is some sort of feel copping.
Well,
right?
and there's a lot of wife tax butt grab TikToks and reels happening right now. They do crack me up, actually.
And so there's this thing where it's just like, but why that? Right? Like, why is that the one pathway? When the reality is it's like, you know, well, maybe you send a flirty text. Maybe you draw a naughty picture on their napkin and tuck it into their lunch when they're leaving for work in the morning. Like, initiation is twofold. It's the communication and then the activity. Like, there's two things happening. And what we tend to do, and like what I think is such a challenge, is we tend to not realize that these bracers and bumpers are narrowing our patterns. Like, we get into a pattern or a habit, and a lot of times it's like, does art inform real life? Does real life inform art? Why is it always grabbing somebody's butt in the kitchen? Like, why couldn't it be, you know, setting out a certain candle, right? Why couldn't it be like, why couldn't it be just sitting, like walking past someone and going like, hey, do you want to have sex later?
Right. Or do you want to go upstairs and play? What we know from some of the research around like long-term couples, and this doesn't have to be for long-term couples, this can be for one-night couples or thruples or whatever it is. But what we know from research for long-term couples is actually a bit of variety has to be present in order to have a long-term, happy, healthy, exciting sex life. So there has to be some variety. But from what you're saying around, it doesn't have to be just one way. It doesn't have to be the Hollywood ideal. Something that I do with my couples and individuals is, you know, if you want to kind of release some of the brakes and anxiety on, you know, what's keeping you from initiating or what's making you feel anxious about initiating, is have the conversation with your clothes on your couch or in your kitchen, and asking each other, like, what kinds of ways would you like to be approached? Are you liking the butt grabs in the kitchen? Would you like a flirty text while at work? Would you like, you know, me to sit in, you know, in boxers with a candle when you come home from work? Would you like, you know, a long slow kiss, or would you like a slap on the, you know, what would you like? And so, like, how do you like to be approached? What are the sexiest ways that I have initiated, or you can imagine me initiating with you? And so see if you can like have that conversation like with your partner and see if new things come up, or if you're getting gems from your past with your partner. And so that way you can like log that into your brain and maybe get some new information with your partner, or some new ideas, or like, you know, kind of maybe drag up some old ideas that you had. But either way, you're going to get some information that hopefully reduces some anxiety and hopefully breaks down some barriers to initiation.
Well, and I think one of the most common barriers to initiation is awkwardness, right? And one of the things that we don't think about is like, when you're at a point of initiation, it's not the first one. No matter where you are in the process, this isn't the first one, right? Because let's say that you're at a point of initiation and you've had that conversation. Well, you had a point of initiation to initiate that conversation. And you had a point of initiation to initiate making the appointment with you to get the knowledge to figure out that you need to initiate that conversation. So you're kind of constantly moving through these places where, and all along the way, the shame narratives around sex come in and make you feel awkward about the fact that you want to talk about sex and that you want to talk about initiating and that you want to figure this out. Which ties back to some extent to that Hollywood standard where it's presented to us as a performance that always goes seamlessly. And it's like, well, no, sex is awkward. And not because of the shame narratives. It's awkward because you're going, hey, do you want to like take all your clothes off and I'll take all my clothes off, and then we'll kind of rub our bodies together.
We're gonna smush our bodies together. We might need to like stop to pee. We might need to stop to get lube. We might
get thirsty. There's probably gonna be sweat involved. There's noise.
There's gonna be some
it's
noise.
A whole thing. But we treat that like that, but that's not the part that we see in the Hollywood standard.
Not at all. By the way, there's no sweat. There's only glistening.
Yes, you only glisten or sparkle if you're some versions of some vampires.
And everything's to music, and everyone has orgasms to the same time, at the same time, exact time.
So that creates for people, like, when they're looking at this going like, well, when did they talk about it? And it's like,
You don't see it. It's never on camera.
You never see it.
Safety, consent, pleasures, desires, boundaries, they're not anywhere on camera.
And so if we don't talk about the fact that it's awkward, if, that's one of the challenges that I have had, like, at different times when I'm talking to a client, they'll just go, you talk about it so easily. And I'm like, it's A, I went to school for it.
Right.
B, I went to school for it. C, I do it every day.
Right.
I talk to people about this every day.
Yes.
That's the practice of it.
Right.
The practice of it. It doesn't feel awkward to me.
Right.
I notice when other people experience that what I'm saying is making it creates an awkwardness for them.
Right.
But I'm talking about totally normal, regular stuff.
Right.
And until that part, until we acknowledge that, like, it will feel awkward to be like, hey, let's sit across from each other in the living room and talk about what feels sexy.
Yes.
Like, yeah, it's gonna be weird. Get some good cheeses.
Yes.
Like, have a snack.
Have some tea, have a glass of wine, have coffee, have a nice glass of lemonade.
But also acknowledge that it's weird. When I, like, that idea of being like, well, why can't we get weird with it? In part, it is, yes. Like, if you want to designate a particular stuffy, it's like, if this weird squid stuffed animal I have is out on the back of the couch when you get home from work, I'm ready.
Right.
Cool.
I'm in the mood.
Absolutely. But it also creates the like, getting weird with it is also going like, hey, can we have a conversation, just like a really point blank, like, frank conversation about the fact that, like, we both say we want to be having more sex, but it's not happening, and I think we should figure out why.
Yes.
Like, that, me saying that is easy for me because I do this job. But for most people, they go, that's such a weird thing to say, or awkward thing to bring up, or I don't know how. And it's like, yes, of course you don't. You've never done it.
Practice, practice, practice. And so some of my clients, when they talk about, like, oh, but it's so awkward, I'm just not comfortable yet. And I tell them, it's like, well, that's because you do need to practice, practice, practice. You won't just magically one day become comfortable. It's like saying, oh, I'm not going to play the violin until I'm good at it. You're not. You have to pick up the violin and be really horrible at it. You have to pick up the violin and break everybody's ears with it until you play and you play and you play, and then you sound incredibly good at it, which is what Julie was saying about, I went to school for it and I went to school for it, and now we talk about this every day for years and years, and we are super comfortable talking about it, and you will be too when you start to talk about it more and more and more. It's just about practice. And there was a time where you felt awkward about it. There was a time where I felt awkward about it. One of the reasons that I do this work is because I noticed as a young person how incredibly shamed I felt by my culture and my community and the lessons I was getting from school and media about my sexuality. I felt so bad about it, and then part of my brain went, that's not right. And so from the inspiration of feeling like that feels really bad and awkward and not right, I was like, I want to learn more and more and more and more, and then went to school for it, practice, and now we feel really comfortable with it. So something about that with couples too, and individuals, the more you talk about it with each other, the more comfortable you'll feel about it.
Definitely. I think I agree wholeheartedly, and, like, very, very similarly, like, there's a whole other conversation to have about that idea of going like, oh, I've kind of zoomed out and I'm watching my own self exist inside a system. And I'm like, the system is attempting to tell me that I'm bad and wrong for the thing that I'm doing, but I know that the way that I feel is good and normal. So I think it's a system problem and not a me problem. But I'm zoomed out up here recognizing that, and I don't actually know how to get back into my body and address it.
Right.
But so, and that's like a whole piece of kind of how some, you know, I ended up going to school for it, right? Like how I ended up going like, wait a minute.
That doesn't sound right, right?
You all keep saying stuff.
Right.
But you're miserable.
Right.
And I'm good. So there's a disconnect here. There's some dissonance. I got to figure that out.
Right.
And so that becomes sort of the education pathway. But the other thing that I think is sometimes a disservice that we do, and it's not an intentional disservice, but it's just a reality. It is awkward. Being comfortable doing an awkward thing doesn't negate that it's awkward. And I think a disservice or like a myth or like a misunderstanding that gets taken away a lot is that like it will just no longer be awkward.
Right.
And it's like, well, we still exist in a society that will constantly tell us that it's awkward.
Yeah.
No matter what. People tell me I'm awkward all the time. What I talk about, the way I talk about it, the loudness at which I talk about it, it's all awkward.
Right.
It doesn't change, like the system hasn't really changed much.
Right.
I have. So there's a piece of this where you can sit down with somebody and go, I'm talking about this thing and I'm really comfortable. I feel comfortable. But I'm also experiencing the awareness that this is awkward.
Right.
And I think for many people, the myth, the hope to some extent, is that that second part will go away.
Ah, yeah.
That it will just be, this is the easiest, most comfortable thing. And like, yeah, it is easy to talk about and it is comfortable.
Right.
And it is still awkward.
Right, because we're not talking about coffee. We're not talking about water. We're talking about sex and bodies and putting bodies together and all of that like wonderful, exciting, but also maybe, yes, but also potentially awkward stuff.
And for many people, it comes back to that piece of practice, right? They just haven't practiced it. And a thing that I talk about a lot is that difference between sex as a performance and sex as an experience. And that's true about communication too. When we watch dialogue in television and we read it in books and we hear it even in podcasts, even this dialogue, right? Like this dialogue is not the most like two people sitting by themselves dialogue. We know we're on camera. It's happening. Hi. But so there's a difference between dialogue as a performance and dialogue and communication as an experience.
Right.
And people don't, like, the only way you can start to get aware that your communication as an experience is yours and is unique for you and you build comfort with it is to begin to challenge and disconnect from that comparison of like dialogue as a performance. Like, I don't want the takeaway from this to be like, oh, I need to be as comfortable as Kat and Julie are. Like, that's not, like, we're two professionals talking to each other about our professional topic of interest.
Right.
That's never going to be what it looks like when you're sitting down with your partner of 2 months, 2 years, 20 years.
Right.
That's going to be unique to you guys, and it isn't on camera.
Right.
And the only people who need to understand it and the only people who need to walk away from that dialogue and that conversation with the knowledge and goals met are the people in it.
Right.
Whereas we're hoping that you all walk away with knowledge that we're trying to convey, which is performance.
Right.
Very different.
Right. So when they sit down together to have the conversation about how would they like to, you know, break through the awkwardness of initiation or release the brakes of initiation, what might some of those key touch points be, do you think?
Body. Your body. Right? When we talk about something as a performance versus an experience, one of the biggest differences is when I'm performing, when anybody's performing, it's about being seen and being perceived.
Yeah.
When you're trying to have a conversation with somebody and you're going, I really want to experience something, you're talking about what it feels like in your body. So like the shift and focus goes away from what it looks like and really driving what it will feel like. And that disconnect is tough because a lot of times what feels good doesn't look It wouldn't be camera pretty.
It might not be. It might be. It might
can
not
be.
be. Right.
But like, you're not thinking of, you will never know because you're not, it isn't meant to be seen. It's meant to be experienced.
Right.
So it's like, if you catch it on camera and it happens to look good, or if you set a mirror up and you catch a glimpse and you go, hey, that's working, awesome. But that's still part of the experience. You aren't setting the mirror up to watch in a performative way. Even if you are watching, you're watching for the experience of seeing, which is different than watching for the experience of watching.
Yes. And what you just made me think of is going beyond, like in the body, yes, but going beyond that, you can actually we could actually tell our couples and individuals, you can couch the questions between each of you, the couple, and like, what do you want to feel for initiation in your body? How do you want to be touched? But also, what do you want, the senses? What do you want to hear? What do you want to see? Do you want dim lighting? What do you want to see of my body? What do you want to see of your body? What do you want to wear? What do you want to hear? Do you want there to be silence? Do you want there to be a sound machine, or do you want there to be music? Like, what do you want to smell? Do you want to have a candle? Things like that. So those are other aspects that you could think of for initiation to reduce breaks. So from like all aspects of the senses.
Again, that comes to that idea of like, we're trying to talk about experience.
Right. How do you want to experience that?
And I think too, there's something about when we think about initiation, like I started this conversation however many years ago when we were talking, like literally this was like, what path have we taken to get here? But if we follow that weird windy path all the way back to one of the things I started saying was that idea of like a butt grab puts people on the Autobahn. It's like, when do you want to take breaks on the Autobahn? Like, so when we think about initiation, and it's like, if somebody starts this initiation conversation and they go, I really like when you touch certain parts of my body, it communicates to me that you are interested in touching more of my body. And you go, great. How much more of your body can I touch before we should do another check to see if we want to go further in this direction, or if we want to take a detour, or if we want to...
Great question.
Right? So it's some of this idea of initiation as if it's all gas, right? Like pulling the brakes off, super essential. But if it's all gas, people go, oh no, I didn't want to go all the way there. I didn't want to... I had other things I wanted to get done, or like I'm thinking about the dishes in the sink, so I can't think about being on the road for that long.
Right.
So being able to, when you're having that conversation, be like, if the conversation is just about like, oh, well, if I do this, do you like that? It's like, great. What do you want to hear? What do you want to smell? What do you want to see? Awesome. But also, at what points should we
check in,
come back to and go like, do we want to go from the kitchen to the bedroom? Do we want to go into the living room? Do we want to get naked and turn on the hockey game? Right? Like, when do we want to build in more questions?
Right.
And then also just kind of learning that building in more questions is normal. It is part of experience versus performance.
Right. And like, or maybe it's a makeout session. Maybe it's a massage session. Maybe it's a sensual caressing session. Maybe it turns out to be like a kissing, and it just turns out to be a kissing session and a groping session, because all that actually sounds utterly delightful and doesn't have to go anywhere else. But communication and check-ins are the key, and the more couples know that they can have that kind of variety and check-ins, it's all very pleasure focused. It doesn't all have to escalate into just one way. It actually gives them more variety in their sex life.
Yeah, which is delightful. And I think one of the things we think about what's not shown, right, when it's performed is also transition. Right? So it's like, if it's a kissing session and you're like really vibing and it's really good, and then you kind of go like, I really want to enjoy this, and I also have other things that I have to do, so I don't want to do anything else, or I'm just in the mood to make out.
Yes.
The challenge for many people is like, okay, let's pump the brakes. Cool. you get to a place where you can start to communicate that. But what many people struggle with, I have heard, and feedback is that experience of going like, and then what? You just get up and go wash the dishes? And it's like, maybe.
Right.
That might be it. But you also can have conversations and come back to those questions about experience and like what you're trying to feel and what you're trying to do. What do you do when you leave a movie?
Right.
When you leave a movie, you go outside and you squint really hard because it was dark in the theater and it's bright outside. Like that, there's a reason that the lights in the lobby are brighter than inside the movie theater, but dimmer than outside.
Right.
It's for a transition.
Right.
So thinking about what your body needs to move from the state you are in to the state you need to go be in a different space is something that we don't really include when we're thinking, like we're trying to increase this conversation about initiation. We're often talking about the start, but we're not, we rarely kind of talk about how to initiate a stop.
Right, or the aftercare. So whether it's a makeout session or a massage session or, oral sex session or a kink impact session, whatever the sexy play session is, aftercare, cuddling, or whatever you negotiate as your transition session afterwards, right? Like that was nice. What did you like about that? What do you need afterwards before I go back to the dishes or back to work or whatever it is? You negotiate that together. What do each of you need? But what you also just made me think of is a lot of our individuals and couples actually need a transition sometimes before the sexy time starts too. A time before, like, let's say you're doing dishes in the kitchen and there's an initiation of like, do you want to go have sexy playtime? What we didn't talk about is sometimes people need buffer time before sexy touches start to just clear their head. Like, ooh, my head is really, really busy. My head is zooming around. I still have my brain on my to-do list, or like when the kids are coming home from school, can we just lay here in bed for a little bit so I can calm my brain before we start sexy touches? So like there's that buffer time afterwards, but sometimes people really need that buffer time before to just get centered.
Yes.
Emily Nagoski, in her keynote, she said she needs 45 minutes of her hour and a half that she allocates for playtime with her husband. The first 45 minutes is just to clear her head and get centered.
This makes me think about a topic that I do want us to talk about probably at length at another time, which is like the experience of being a person with ADHD and trying to have a sex life. And the reality of like my brain, as soon as you said that about Emily Nagoski, and I remember that speech,
right?
At the moment that I'm sitting right in front of her, shout out Delaware, by the way, she's from Delaware.
She is.
I'm sitting right in front of her and she says this and I'm just in my brain, I went, oh God, that's a nightmare. And I know I made a face, right? Like for all of my efforts to just be neutral, I was like, oh, 45 minutes of just laying somewhere. Like that's not like the understimulation that I, perpetually experience as a person with ADHD.
Terrible.
I'm like, you can't do that. Like it will turn me off so fast.
Right.
And that comes from, again, that idea of like the difference between performance and experience, right? It's like what I need is going to be my experience.
Right.
And having, I know that some people have written some books about it, but just in general, like when I have ever, like, there is a huge gap in navigating and talking about ADHD and talking about what it means to have ADHD and be a sexual being.
Right. Right. But for some clients, for example, with anxiety, or for some clients with trauma, they need that buffer time to calm their nervous system between like, let's say, exiting work, getting in the bed with their partner. They need this buffer time to calm their nervous system, to calm their brain before starting sexual touch, to kind of like let their body and brain know this is a safe time before sexual touch. But you're like, this would make me nuts. Crazy. But for many clients, this is what calms their nervous system.
Right. And so this touches on that idea of like why this isn't just a one-time conversation. It's, okay, we're going to start. And the challenge that I think many people find is you open the door to this conversation and just like we've found out, it's a journey.
And
We're not, like, we are still technically talking about initiation, but we're talking about all the things that come up when you start talking about initiation. For instance, okay, like I said, right? What happens if it's me and Emily Nagowski trying to do sexy touch?
Right.
Right now we've got a mismatch, and we're
You're
gonna
be like there. You're gonna be like this.
This was.
Ready yet?
You know,
You
set a
relaxed
timer,
yet?
like how we do it, right? I'm gonna go beat a video game. I'm gonna go play, you know, an entire, and my brain will be somewhere else. And that doesn't. What that doesn't mean is that we are completely incompatible and we should never try.
Right.
But what it does mean is that we're going to need to have a conversation that will have unique solutions for me and that person that are like, you need 45 minutes to unwind? Cool. Awesome. I hear you. What if we do shared space? I put in some headphones.
Parallel play.
I listen to something. We're in the bed together. Maybe there's some gentle touching, not sexual touching.
Right.
But I'm playing a game or listening to something. What is that? And we start to negotiate.
Right.
Right? Like, you can have your unwind time. If you want me in another room, great.
Right.
Then come get me. Here are some ways that you can communicate that this is what we're after.
Right.
I will still be thinking about it. So,
Right.
And starting to build a unique conversation that's only going to work for me and that person because we have unique needs.
Right. So, which just speaks to like really creative solutions, which actually goes back to the beginning of our conversation about really creative and infinite solutions, not just one path to initiation, but grabs up the escalator to, you know, penis and vagina, but ongoing conversations, ongoing conversations, and infinite ways to do this. So thank you so much for watching our video or videos, and thanks for being here.
Wow, what a conversation.
I know.
Oh my goodness.
Amazing.
I mean, not to be like, in my totally unbiased opinion, that was filmed really well. Like, whoever was behind the camera and did the edits was great.
Phenomenal.
Whew, that person doesn't get the credit they deserve, honestly. It was me. But anyway, that was a great conversation. And I do want to talk about one more conversation before we get out of here. And that is the conversation between you and that like and subscribe button.
Slap that like button.
So slap that like button. Spank that like button. Tell that like button it's been very bad and it needs to be punished. So smash it. So yes, please like this video if you love it. And even if you don't really like our other stuff, just like it. It helps us out. Subscribe to our channel. Tell your friends to subscribe and everything. And check us out. We got shorts. We got little show segments, clips if you don't want to watch the whole thing. Just support us. And tune in next week for another episode of The Bedroom Brainiacs.
We'll be here.
And we hope you will be too. That was a good ending.
Yeah.